The market on Karen Station never slept. It couldn't. Too many species depended on it. Too many deals were made in shadows, and too many lives passed through its corridors to allow silence. The station drifted at the edge of known space, suspended between lawful trade routes and lawless frontier systems. Everything that couldn't exist openly elsewhere found a place here, including people. I had come to Karen for salvage contracts, nothing more. My ship needed repairs, my credits were low, and frontier work paid well if you didn't ask too many questions. That was the unspoken rule of survival out here. Don't look too closely. Don't get involved. I was halfway through the lower market levels when I heard the voice. Please, human. The word stopped me cold. Not because aliens didn't know what I was, but because of how it was said. Not with curiosity. Not with contempt. With desperation. I turned. They were kneeling inside a containment field, 6 figures pressed together behind a lattice of shimmering energy. Their skin was a dull slate blue, marked with faded scars and ritual etchings. Their armor, once formidable, was cracked, stripped of insignia, reduced to little more than scrap metal strapped to exhausted bodies. Warriors. Former ones. One of them, taller than the rest, lifted their head. Their eyes were golden, but dimmed by hunger and exhaustion. Please buy us, they said. The market noise seemed to fade. I felt a familiar tightening in my chest, the instinct to walk away. Slavery wasn't illegal on Karen Station. Indentured servitude, bonded labor, asset reclamation. There were plenty of words that made it sound less ugly. I'd seen it before. I'd learned to ignore it. You don't want me, I said quietly. I'm not a buyer. The aliens shook their head. You're human, they said. Humans still believe in choice. That hit harder than it should have. Their species was called the Verith. I knew the name. Everyone did. Once, the Verith had been feared across 3 sectors. They were elite shock troopers bred for adaptability, trained from early cycles to survive any environment. Empires hired them, then feared them, then eventually turned on them when their contracts ended. The Verith war clans were dismantled piece by piece. These were survivors. What happened to your commanders? I asked. The taller one, clearly their leader, answered. Executed. Sold. Dispersed, they said flatly. We were deemed inconvenient. How long have you been here? Long enough to forget the stars, another murmured. I clenched my jaw. Buying them would make me complicit in a system I hated. Not buying them meant walking away and pretending I never heard the plea. How much? I asked the slaver. He smiled instantly. I didn't plan to keep them. That was the lie I told myself as credits transferred and the containment field dissolved. Officially, they were my assets, bound by contract, subject to labor terms, monitored through neural compliance tags. I hated every word of it. The Verith followed me silently to my ship. No resistance. No celebration. Just quiet, careful steps, like people who had learned that hope was dangerous. Once aboard, I sealed the cargo ramp and turned to face them. You're not property, I said immediately. This arrangement is temporary. I'll find a way to dissolve the contracts. The leader studied me. Humans say things like that, they said. And sometimes they mean it. That wasn't comforting. They told me their names that night. Not all of them. Verith names were earned, not given freely, but enough. The leader was Kether. He had once commanded a full strike unit. The others were veterans of different campaigns, bound together by survival rather than rank. They didn't ask for food, didn't ask for quarters, didn't sleep until I insisted. I watched them from the cockpit viewport, standing in silence, gazing at the stars as if memorizing them. I should have turned them over to an advocacy network, or abandoned them at the next neutral station. That would have been safer. Instead, I asked Kether why they chose me. Because you hesitated, he said. That's it. Yes. The problem with rescuing people in a broken system is that the system notices. 3 days after leaving Karen Station, my ship was flagged by an enforcement cruiser under the banner of the Orion Trade Authority. Their message was polite, professional. They wanted to inspect my cargo. I knew what that meant. The contracts were legal. The tags were active. On paper, everything was in order. But if they sensed noncompliance, if they believed I intended to free them, I'd be charged with breach of commercial law. Kether stood beside me as the cruiser docked. You will lose much because of us, he said. Maybe, I replied. You could still sell us, he said evenly. At a profit. I looked at him. I won't. He nodded once. That is why we asked you. The inspection passed, but not without suspicion. Afterward, Kether approached me again. You should know, he said, we are not helpless. I never thought you were. Our bonds are broken but not erased, he continued. If threatened, we can fight. That's exactly what I'm trying to avoid. He tilted his head. Avoidance is not survival. Neither was recklessness. The next weeks were a balancing act. Repair jobs, supply runs, quiet negotiations. I reached out to underground networks, looking for a legal loophole, a sponsor, anything that could nullify the contracts. Every option came with a price. And then came the message. A Vareth warlord, one of the few who had risen again, was reclaiming assets. He wanted his warriors back. By force, if necessary. The attack came without warning. One moment, we were running diagnostics. The next, alarm screamed, and the ship lurched violently. Boarding torpedoes. Kether didn't hesitate. Release us, he said. Now. If I disengaged the compliance tags, I'd be violating the contracts outright. The authority would brand me a criminal. If I didn't, they'd die. My hand hovered over the controls. I thought of the market, of the plea, of the way Kether had said humans still believe in choice. I shut the system down. The tags went dark. Kether straightened, inhaling sharply, as if shaking off a weight he'd carried too long. Stay behind us, he said. I didn't. I fought with them. The Vareth moved like living weapons, fluid, precise, terrifying. But this wasn't conquest. It was defense. Protection. Each of them placed themselves between me and danger without hesitation. When it was over, my ship was damaged beyond quick repair. The warlord's forces retreated, but not before broadcasting a threat. You have made enemies, the message said. I already knew. We couldn't go back to known space. I took us beyond charted routes, into regions where empires thinned and rules blurred. The Vareth helped repair the ship, working with a focus that bordered on reverence. One night, as we drifted between stars, Kether approached me quietly. You are now bound to us, he said. I didn't ask for that. No, he agreed. You earned it. He explained then what the plea truly meant. When a Vareth begged to be bought, it wasn't submission. It was trust. They believed that whoever answered would either save them or reveal themselves as no different from those who broke them. You were not ready for that weight, he said. He was right. We found refuge on a world no maps acknowledged, a former research colony abandoned after a stellar anomaly altered its orbit. It was harsh but livable, remote enough to hide. We built something there. Not a base. A home. The Vareth began to change, not losing who they were, but expanding beyond it. They learned to farm, to build, to teach. I watched warriors learn patience, cooperation without command structures, purpose without violence. And they taught me how to stand my ground, how to protect without controlling, how to choose people over systems. Months passed, then years. The Orion Trade Authority eventually found us. This time I didn't run. I stood before them with evidence, testimonies, recordings, proof of abuse, proof that the contracts violated emergent sentient rights. The case shook the sector. It wasn't justice, but it was a beginning. The Verith were declared free beings under provisional protection. The warlord was hunted. The markets on Karen Station changed, slowly, imperfectly, but they changed. One evening, as twin suns dipped below the horizon, Kether stood beside me. "You never asked for this," he said. "No," I replied, "but I'd do it again." He regarded me for a long moment. "Then hear this," he said. "You were not ready for our plea, but you became worthy of it." I watched the others laughing nearby, alive, unowned, choosing their own paths. The universe was still cruel, still broken, but in one corner of it, something had shifted. All because I stopped walking when I heard a voice say, "Please buy us human," and finally listened.